Please invite the officials and the deputations to come in. I now call the meeting to order. We've already formed a quorum. Please invite the deputations and officials to come in, please. Thank you, Mr. Chang, Secretary for Labour and Welfare, and your colleagues. Secretary, before the deputation speak, would you please use about 5 minutes to brief us on the thoughts of the Commission on poverty, please? Deputations, would you please be seated in accordance with the name of your organization? All right. We now discuss the problem of working poor. We'll have 2 parts today because we have 60-odd deputations today. Before we finish, I'll give 5 to 10 minutes to the administration to respond to the deputations. For the first batch, we have 33 deputations. So I would like the government representatives to give us their views first. And deputations, in front of you, you have the microphone and the earpiece. Channel 0 is floor, Channel 1 is Cantonese, Channel 2 is English. Your remarks will not be protected by the Electoral Powers and Privileges Ordinance. So whatever you speak, you have to be responsible for those remarks. So 5 minutes for the Secretary to brief us on his views on the issue. Good afternoon, members and deputations. First of all, I'm very pleased to have this opportunity to have an exchange with you. We're very concerned about this issue. Apart from CSSA for the low-income households, what support the administration has for them. We know that we have targeted measures to help them. Some measures target families with working members. Some are supplementary in nature. Some are recurrent assistance. Beyond the CSSA scheme, we have to assist the low-income people. We have a series of measures and policies to help them. The most obvious example is the work incentive travel assistance scheme. This is to encourage employment, particularly for the low-income group. The objective is very clear. We took one step further. Starting from January this year, we relaxed the so-called due approach. Starting from the 1st of July, the subsidy for the past 6 months can be claimed up to a ceiling of $3,600. This is a very good example to indicate how we assist the families with working poor members. 44,200 people have received the subsidy. And as of last Friday, we received 1,400 applications from the eligible. We believe more applications will come in, so eventually the number of recipients will rise. For healthcare, housing, and so forth, we have recurrent assistance as well as fee remission or reduction for them. And under the CCF, with over 10 projects, and many low-income families without CSSA have benefited. Let me cite an example. Under the CCF, some low-income families have their full-time primary students receive at-school lunch subsidy. 56,000 primary students have benefited in the school year, and will seriously consider formalizing the scheme. Then these students from low-income families will be able to benefit. And for those living in poor living conditions, for the low-income group, they also enjoy subsidy. 25,000 households covering 58,000 persons have benefited. $3,000 for individuals, all the way up to $38,000. That's the existing system. As for universal measures, you all know that preschool vouchers, 10-year free education, public rental housing, medical and healthcare services, etc., are within the assistance schemes. And also, electricity subsidy is another item of assistance. And then we have the statutory minimum wage. Ever since its implementation on the 1st of May 2013, the low-income working households have benefited. From February to April this year, the nominal rise in wages has increased by 8.7% year-on-year, averaging 4%, 1.9% for the employees, and after deducting inflation is negative 2%. So to a certain extent, the SMW has been able to assist the low-income group. And 210,000 low-paid employees will benefit. And in the COP in May, we further consider how to assist the working poor. This issue is rather complicated. We are continuing to absorb opinion, so today is a good opportunity for us to listen to the views of deputations so that they can enlighten us and we can have new thoughts in the COP. I have to emphasize that we keep an open mind. Major policy change and resource considerations are there for us to consider, but our attitude is an open one.
Over to the deputations, about 3 minutes each, and the first is Momentum 107, Mr. Ho-Man Kit. And then next, Ms. Law Pui-shan, Policy Research Officer from the Hong Kong Catholic Commission for Labour Affairs. She is still on her way. And then Mr. Ho Chun Kit, Policy Officer from Oxfam, Hong Kong. Over to you, Mr. Ho. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Well, Oxfam would like to have this low-income subsidy to help the working poor. And in our latest study report, actually you see that there is about 1.1 million low-income families, and most of them are from the working poor, and that's why this is a very serious problem. And on the other hand, we can see that, as Mr. Cheung just said, statutory minimum wage has managed to mean that for those who are working, their pay has risen by about 8%. But then in terms of helping the poor, well, for the larger households and also those families with children, they have not been lifted out of poverty. And also, given the rise in the statutory minimum wage, SMW, it has not been able to catch up with inflation. That's why there is a need for us to implement this low-income subsidy. And also for the working poor, well, for those who are actually working, they will also have to support 2 members of the family who are not working, and relatively speaking, for other families, we only need to have one adult or one working person supporting another one who is not working, and therefore you can see that the pressure on these families is excessively high. That's why we will have to focus on the working poor with children. Number one, we have to avoid a situation whereby there will be a wage subsidy, because we are actually targeting on those who are more reliant, in particular children in these families. That's why under our plan there are 3 objectives. Number one, we would like to reduce the pressure on these families in supporting their children, and number two, we'd like to encourage these people to continue to work in the labor market so that they would not fall into the net of social security because of their economic or financial situation. And also, we don't want to see children who will be poor after generation after generation. And also for the working poor, the working hours will have to meet at least 35 hours or 140 hours a month, and they will also have to have 1 kid below 18, and then every child will be eligible for $800. Well, that has already taken into account the support from CCF for children, and also we have come up with this amount of $800, and the total expenditure according to our initial calculation, if the projection of the children population of about 180,000 is correct, then the total expenditure every year is about $1.7 billion. That will account for about 2+% of the surplus that we have accumulated during the past 5 years, and therefore we think that the administration is able to offer this subsidy. Next, People's Power, Mr. Yu Fei. Yes, I'm here to state the stance of the People Power on this, and also the rationale behind this. In fact, last year, our chairman, Mr. Lau Kar-ho, already wrote an article, and we hope that we can have a more simplified approach. We do not have to do a lot of calculation with regard to who is eligible for how much, and we are thinking about the introduction of a negative income tax, so that that would be a very simple calculation. We'll be explaining that in detail later, so that that would make sure that in Hong Kong, for the lower income families, they would be eligible for this subsidy at different rates, and then they do not have to worry about meeting their living cost. And I'll be sharing my view and also explaining some of the details here. All right, if we were to introduce this negative income tax, and Mr. Lau has given this example. All right, well, if the tax payment threshold is $30,000 a month, and somebody is earning about $10,000, so he will have to make at least $20,000 more before he is eligible to pay tax. And therefore, for the gap of $20,000, we can say that some 15% out of that will be given back to this individual, because he has not been able to earn that much and he is not able to pay tax. And in doing that, that can be applied to children's allowance and so on. Some people might be worried. Well, in Hong Kong, a lot of the welfare measures will continue, and if you were to introduce this negative income tax, then does it mean that the administration will have to pay some tens of billions of dollars extra to subsidize these low-income families? In fact, with regard to WITS, there have been different arguments, and in fact, all these can be adjusted. But then once we incorporate this idea, we do not have to worry about the SAR government, which is sitting on a reserve or surplus of thousands of billions of dollars. In fact, is now embarking on projects like the WKCD and so on. And with the introduction of this tax, well, we don't have to argue about whether or not we should introduce the one-off relief measures and so on. So that would also reduce a lot of conflicts and controversy. And Mr. Si Wing-ching is a very smart person, and he says that that would encourage people not to work. It's like encouraging people to be addicted to drugs. All right, the Bureau Director also said that he's very concerned about the different forms of subsidies and so on. All right, if he's spending a lot of money for the children or for the kid to learn how to play piano and so on. So can that be used as an excuse for saying no to this, because you think that people will become drug addicts and so on? So that's what I'd like to say for the time being. Next, Labour Party, Mr. Tam Chun Yin. Thank you. Just now, the Bureau Director said that the SMW has played a certain role in easing the plight of the poor, but then that has been far from adequate. And some NGOs are saying that we will have to do a bit more. And that's why we believe that we will have to come up with something like the so-called negative income tax, so that for the working poor, that would also form a form of subsidy for them. So we think we will have to come up with an income threshold, and the administration will have to work that out. That is for the living expenses for a basic family. How much would it cost? And then we will deduct. We will then calculate the income, and then we will have to deduct the living expenses. And we can also make reference to the CNS department with regard to the household income survey, and then household earnings survey, and then we will have to come up with a ceiling for rent, and then about 40% should go or should be offered in the form of a subsidy. In fact, that can be even more. In particular, those who are living in abject poverty, if they are working, they should be eligible for more. And the best thing is for the IRD to deal with that, because as we know, well, the most efficient department within the administration would definitely be the IRD in the revenue department, and many taxpayers' information would be held by the IRD, and that's why it would be most efficient for the IRD to operate it. And the CNS department and the IRD can also do the statistics, because it costs about $160 for every case, but then for the WITS it costs about $1,000. So if the IRD can take up this job, it will be a lot less expensive. And also, if we were to introduce this low-income subsidy, we should not introduce a means test, because earlier on, when we discussed the OALA, there was already a lot of controversy. There is no need for us to have this means test, because you do not want to discourage people to save money. And if you look at the WITS, actually, for those who are not able to meet the means test, there were only 316 cases, accounting for some 0.6% of the total number of applicants. Given the fact that you spent so much effort in doing the means test, and if the result is not that satisfactory, then I think it's better to do without it. And therefore, we all know that under the CSSA, we have the low-income CSSA, but then there would also be this stigmatization effect. And also, if you earn more than $4,200, then for every dollar more that you earn, you will have $1. You will have $1 deducted from the CSSA, and therefore, in the end, we should introduce this low-income subsidy. Next, Mr. Si Cheng Wee from Cleaning Workers Union. Yes, we try to ease the situation of the working poor, but then, as many have said, well, with the SMW, actually that would only be reviewed once every 2 years, and that's why the SMW has not been able to catch up with inflation. And also, with regard to the amount of $30, well, many of us would like to have $35. That's why it's still a far cry from what we are asking for. And also, for many young cleaning workers, well, in fact, we believe that for the working poor, the administration has also been playing an active role in creating this particular group. In fact, for the young working cleaning worker, they're actually earning about $7,400 a month. And then when compared to those directly hired by the administration, their pay would be a lot lower. In fact, even if the working hours are the same, they would be earning about $9,000 or even up to $10,000 a month if they are hired directly by the administration. And therefore, to ease the situation of the working poor, I think the most important thing is for the administration to do away with outsourcing, so that the administration will be hiring these workers directly. And in fact, for many of the outsourced workers, many of them are working for private contractors, and they're also getting very little pay. And the SMW has not been able to catch up with the inflation. And given that, we should introduce this low-income subsidy. But then, as the Bureau Director said, well, we have already got the WITS. Actually, there is also this dual-track approach, and people can also apply as individuals. All right, for individuals, well, many workers, well, their income might not have exceeded $7,700, but then if you look at their asset, it's very easy for them to exceed the limit. Because for an average worker, if they have about $100,000 as savings, would that be regarded as too much? No, of course not. And therefore, for the means test, you should be scrapping that altogether. And also for the amount is far from adequate. Actually, you're actually talking about $600 a month. That's the maximum. And basically for the workers, if they are already having low income and if they're not able to meet their living expenses, that would be a drop in the bucket. That would still not be able to help them. And therefore, in the end, we should introduce this low income subsidy, and there should be no means test, and the amount should be able to make sure that the workers' families living expenses can be met. Thank you. Next, Aouyang Kun Tong, Alliance for Universal Pension. Thank you. A couple of points. First of all, just now we talked about SMW and also the labor force and their plight. In fact, come to think of it, well, by the end of June, the CNS department announced this or published this report saying that for the labor force, what's the situation with regard to their retirement, and 1.7 million people, according to the CNS department, they would not be able to support their retirement life, and 600,000 people are expected to have to work even after retirement. And then by the time when they retire, well, for the military provident fund and so on, all right, 1.2 million workers will not benefit. So I'm setting out these figures. That's because there are many who are working in a community. Well, through the first or primary distribution, they can only live from hand to mouth. They are not able to have any saving for their retirement. So this shows that in a community, the SMW is too low. It's way too low. And I hope that the Bureau Director can respond to that. And if the SMW has been adequate, then for the working poor and also for the low-income families, their living standard should have been improved. And in fact, some trade union also said that the SMW, all right, they've been asking for $35. So what's the view of the Bureau Director? Can you respond to that? That's number one. And number two, well, when it comes to social security system, well, as an NGO, we are more concerned about this. Are we talking about a household-based approach? Again, this is really very appalling. Why is it that the administration would like to introduce the OALA? Because they said that, they do not have to sign off this paper saying that they would not be supporting the parents, but then only 340,000 people have applied. So originally the administration said that some 400,000 people would be eligible. So what happens to the 60,000 odd elders who have not come forward to apply? And also under the current social security system for the workers upon their retirement, apparently, even after their retirement, they will still be concerned about their livelihood. So how are you able to prepare for rainy days? We are most concerned that with the OALA, all right, fewer people will become scavengers. So we are concerned about the administration's view on this. And I think we have to think about the CSSA itself. There are loopholes that have to be plugged. And the administration has been saying that, all right, we have the CCF and also other different subsidies and so on. I think we should all go back to the we should start from the scratch. Have we reviewed the CSSA? It's neither here nor there. And as a result, those who are disadvantaged, they have not been able to benefit from it. Thank you. Next, Mr. Chair Hoi Kin from the Kwai Chong Grassroots Rights Concern Group, and then Mr. Wong Hiu Kwan, Low Income Family Rights Concern Group. Ms. Yo-Yo Chan, Neighborhood and Worker Service Center. Thank you, Chairman. I'm representing the NWSC. Well, for the grassroots workers, well, I think this is our major concern, and many Gai Fongs are of the view that there is a necessity for us to introduce a low-income subsidy. In fact, for the WITS, it's been proposed that it should be increased from $600 to $1,000. We do not support that because that would only benefit the so-called and-nothing people. But then it's not going to help the low-income people. Well, for these people, they might be allocated a PRH flat. Does that mean that the living standard will improve right away? And also for the WITS, that's only for traveling expenses. That should be part of our labor policy. But then for the low income subsidy, is a poverty alleviation measure, and therefore the two should not be mixed. And also for the low-income subsidy, one of the principles is that we should not just be increasing some of the existing subsidies and then we will then treat it as a new form of subsidy. That should not be the case. And the NWSC is in contact with many low-income people and will be fighting for this for them. And many people have told us that even with statutory minimum wage, because their expenses are high and they are still living in poverty. That's why we believe that the target of the proposal is not just the disadvantaged families, and also for the singletons, and also for the disabled, and also for people who are working on casual jobs. They should be protected by the community as a whole, because with regard to this proposal, we think that is a secondary safety net outside of the CSSA. Well, the idea is that they should be lifted out of poverty. We should also prevent them from living in poverty, so that for those who are working, well, we are not just talking about meeting their basic expenses. They should be able to have personal development, and they should also be able to save up for rainy days. Next, Kwai Chong Estate Striving for the Transportation Subsidy Concern Group, Ms. Wong. Yes, we are a group of workers in Kwai Chong. We are all in favor of introducing this low-income subsidy, because there is no policy right now to help some 600,000 people who are from the working poor families. Yes, we have the SMW is now at $30, but then many of our members have told us that, well, with the SMW, number one, SMW is on the low side. We've been asking for $35 or above. And also inflation is very high, and also food prices have gone up. Well, even if you buy a kg of vegetables, it's very costly, and rents have been going up, and therefore even if you earn $30 an hour, you will still not be able to buy a meal from the Hong Kong style restaurant. So that could cost you some $50–40. So for these poor families and for these low-income families, even if they work very hard, they will still not be able to sustain a reasonable and decent living. That's why, as you can see, the problem of the working poor is very serious. It's not just about the individuals and their next generations finding it difficult to develop, but they are not able to save up anything for their retirement. That's why, in order to lift them out of poverty, we will have to introduce this low-income subsidy. The concerned group would also like to introduce this idea of prevention of poor or poverty. So we should not be looking at the basic expenses of these families. We will have to have a basic rate for them, so that for the grassroots workers, they would not just be able to lift themselves out of poverty. They should also have resources to develop themselves and potential, so that they would not be living below the poverty line.
We are also very concerned about the WITS. As we all know, when the scheme was launched, it was also a household-based scheme. The government was looking at the needs of low-income working households. And a lot of people say that Now, the WITS is a subsidy for low-income households. However, our concerned group does not agree with that. We think there are two different concepts. We think that the government must differentiate these two concepts, such as the WITS is to encourage people to work, and there should be another subsidy for low-income working households. Next, Mr. Leung Kin Wai, Kwai Chung Estate Labour Rights Concerned Group. He's not here yet, and Mr. Wong Yun Tat from is a member of Kwai Chung District Council. Well, I'm from the Kwai Chung District. This is one of the three most poor districts in Hong Kong, and there are many people living in PRH. However, many people are still living a very low living standard. For Kwai Chung Estates, there are about 13,000 households, and about 20% of these households are on CSSA, and about 5% of them are low-income households. And this does not cover the households that are not on CSSA. Now, why are they not on CSSA? Because they think that there is a negative label on them, so they refuse to accept government help. And also, the Secretary pointed out that there are many subsidies. However, there are a lot of tests and vettings as well, because these families members are already working very hard, and they still have to go through all these formalities. Now, there is the WITS, and the CCF is providing a lot of subsidies. Actually, for all these subsidies and schemes, there are different application forms and different thresholds, and it will take them a lot of time and effort to make such applications. For example, if they apply for WITS, they will have to spend more than 1 hour on the application, and they may have to go to the relevant office for 3 times. So it's really very demanding on them. So I think there should be a through train approach so that these people can receive a reasonable amount and they do not have to go through all these formalities. I think the government should take this into consideration. Second, we are also fighting for another subsidy. That is, for example, education. There should be subsidies or more subsidies for extracurricular activities. And also for students with special needs, the subsidy should be increased. Now, they are not people with disabilities, but they are students with special needs, so they need extra resources so that these students can compete equally with other students. Otherwise, their families would have to make more efforts to take care of them, and sometimes their parents cannot go out to work because they have to take care of these students. So I think the government should conduct a comprehensive review. And also for the subsidies for textbooks and etc., there is also a means test, and there are different levels. For example, for subvented schools and for kindergartens, etc. So I think for families with more income, you can provide them with less subsidies and vice versa. So I think that all the different subsidies should be reviewed so that people can apply in an easier manner. Next, Mr. Jason Wong, New People's Party. Now, a lot of poor people are relying on CSSA. And this is to meet the healthcare needs and education needs, and this is a safety net for them so that they have a reasonable income to support their living. However, there are still many vulnerable groups in Hong Kong, and they are not covered by CSSA, and the government has not faced their problems squarely. Because CSSA has a labeling effect, and also it's very complicated to make applications. So a lot of people are deterred from applying for CSSA. So if people are not on CSSA, they may be leading a very difficult life. I think the government should really focus on these kinds of households. All sorts of subsidies should be looked into carefully so that such households can be supported, and their family members can be encouraged to work. Now the government is looking at a low-income subsidy. We think that the government should conduct a comprehensive consultation on this kind of cash subsidy. We adopt an open attitude towards this. We hope that further studies can be conducted, and you should listen to more views. And also in terms of education, welfare, and healthcare, we understand that there have been a number of pilot schemes, and some schemes may be turned into regular assistance programs. The CCF should continue to implement the scheme for subsidizing students' lunch. We think that is a good measure because the young people are very important for our future, and also for adolescent children or adolescent students. They need sufficient nutrition to grow healthily. So for families in poverty, they may not be able to ensure this. So this lunch subsidy is very important. Other than lunch subsidy, we also hope that the governments can focus more on children. Intergenerational poverty is also very important. Now, you can see that students from poor family lack resources, and in the future they may not be able to lift themselves from poverty. So subsidies should be provided to these children. You should look at the number of children in these families, and then you can set amounts for subsidies. We suggest now maybe several $100s should be given as subsidy to children of such families. And you can also encourage people to have more children by doing this. Next, Mr. Kong Kin-shing from Tin Shui Wai Community Development Front. Well, Secretary, please lift your head and look at the Gai Fong sitting up there. Well, there are not just NGO representatives sitting here. We also have some Gai Fongs here. They have spent $50 and more than 1 hour traveling to the Legislative Council. Why are they doing this? There is a lady sitting on the front row. She cooked for her family this morning, and then she had to go to the hospital, and then afterwards she had to rush here. And another of them had to take half-day leave to come here. We are talking about 600,000 families like this. Every day they hope that the government can give them more support. Several days ago, some political parties said that the BITS should be raised from $600 to $1,000 so that low-income families can be helped. Well, for Tin Shui Wai residents, I don't know whether this is helpful because you are just helping those people, those have-nots, and you are not helping people who are living in PRH. Well, they are in such a condition. It is because of the government's failure in its policy. Now the link is ruling all the shopping malls there, and they have to suffer high prices. I have asked them, have you thought about this? That is, when your children grow up, you will have a better life. Well, they say that I do not want to be a burden of my children. So for grassroots parents, how come it is so difficult for them to lead a happy life, and for their children to go to university is just like an unreliable a dream that cannot be realized. So in Chinese societies, we always hope that when we raise our children and when they grow up, they can take care of the parents. So why it's so difficult in Hong Kong now? Well, Secretary, if you make a decision, you can affect the lives of 600,000 people. So can you give an answer to us today? And one Gai Fong hopes that I can ask the Secretary this question. They want to know that how come now they keep on working and they are getting poorer and poorer. And what measures does the government have to help them? The government has just launched WITS and you are just subsidizing students' lunch and what else? And also, thirdly, how come the government is spending $100 million in each district and you are not using this amount of money to help them? They hope that low-income subsidy can be implemented as soon as possible and negative income tax can also be launched. Next, Mr. Chen Ting-pong from 天水圍爭取專業生活權益會. I would like to ask the Secretary this. What is meant by a dignified life? For a low-income household, the members may be casual workers and they do not have medical insurance. So when they are ill, they do not have income. And they cannot take care of their children. And they cannot support their parents. In particular, for people between the age of 0 and 5, I just talked to the Guy Fongs. They said that children of this age tend to have a lot of illnesses, and also the parents are also very frail. So they have to do all the work. They have to make ends meet, and they are not very clear about how to apply for different sorts of subsidies, and they are not meeting the CSSA thresholds, so they can only eat bread. And I would like to refer to some figures. If you go to a outpatients clinic in the Northwest New Territories cluster, only 16 chips are left for those in the waiting line. However, in Eastern Hong Kong, they still have 1,000 places. So if they cannot go to outpatient clinics, then they have to go to private doctors. And for the doctor to prescribe them with 2 days medicines, the doctor would charge $190. So can they afford that? And if they cannot afford that, what would happen to them? They are doomed to suffer. So how can they survive like this? I hope the Secretary would really look at their situation. Low-income subsidy should be provided so that even though they are sick, they can still take care of their families. Next, 創處理天水圍州爭取低收入家庭權益會. Now, first, I would like to talk about 天水圍. There are a lot of problems there. Underemployment is very serious in 天水圍, and people have to go to other districts to work. Well, it seems that the Secretary is doing a great job that has launched the WITS. However, he's not helping many people. For a Guy Fong to come here today, he has to pay $50. If you work for 26 days a month, then you have to pay $1,300 on traffic expenses. So how many of them would like to go to other districts to work? They want to work within their district. However, there are not that many jobs in 天水圍, and 300,000 people are living there. So you really have not helped them solve their problem. What they really want is to work in their own district. And also for 天水圍街坊, many of them are casual workers. And the SMW does not help them much. And for inflation rate is very high in 天水圍. 天水圍 is a place where you can see real estate hegemony. There are not many markets. We have been fighting for building wet markets there, but the government has not approved that. Many people do not want to rely on CSSA. A lot of people think that people living in 天水圍 are all on CSSA. Actually, not many of them are on CSSA because they are afraid of the labeling effect. As for the low-income households in 天水圍, many of them are young couples. And they may have 1 to 4 children. And if they have 4 children, it's really difficult for them to make ends meet. Only one family member can go out to work, and also they are low-skilled workers and casual employees. They may only be making $10,000 a month, and there are 5 family members that are relying on this. So it's really a difficult life for them. And also, they need all sorts of subsidies. They would have to apply for subsidies. They told me that it's so complicated to apply for such subsidies. However, they still have to do it. So to ensure where is a remote area, these people are not highly educated. They have low skill. So this is really a huge problem. I really don't know what to do. The Oxfam suggested that a low-income subsidy should be launched. I really support that. So I think for the low-income subsidy, it just serves to mend this walk a bit, but it cannot solve the whole problem. Ms. Yang Pui-ying, 爭取低收入保障聯席. Thank you, Chairman. Secretary, good afternoon. I would like to ask you this. There are a lot of problems in Hong Kong now. When you go to work each day, how many hours do you work per day? And if you look at the Hong Kong situation, I understand that a lot of government officials are very busy and you have to work for more than 10 hours a day and you're very tired. It seems that I'm very concerned with the Secretary. Other than being concerned with the government officials and the Secretary, we are more concerned about the 1 million low-income working households in Hong Kong. The family members may have to work even longer hours a day. However, they still cannot support their family adequately. They do not have basic protections. It's not like the Secretary or other government officials. After working for more than 10 hours a day, when you go home, you have a nice home, you have nutritious food, and you can, if you are sick, you can go to a doctor. But when these poor people are ill, they dare not go to doctors because they cannot pay for the medical fees. So it's really impossible for them to get adequate health care. I think the government should launch a low-income subsidy as soon as possible. We understand that the COP had held meetings discussing low-income subsidy. For our organization, we have also put together an option, and the option has been submitted to the Secretariat already. I hope that the Secretary can meet us as soon as possible to discuss this. For the low-income households, we divide them into 3 tiers. That's from 50% to 70% of the median income. And also, there are also 3 types of subsidies: full subsidy, half subsidy, and 3/4 subsidy. For example, for families with children with special needs or with handicapped adults, the subsidy for each child should be $900. If the child has special needs, $1,200. And for handicapped adults, the subsidy should be $800. So for the whole option, we have put together a budget. It's about $5 billion a year. So $5 billion is just 1/10 of the government's surplus each year. It's your surplus. So if you just use 1/10 of it and you can solve the problem of working poor in Hong Kong, then why does not the government do it as soon as possible? We have many deputations here today. We are very concerned about the timetable for launching the low-income subsidy. Thank you, Mr. Wu Sheng, 關注低收入小組. Well, we'll talk about low-income protection. This is the last line to protect the low-income working households. Many families are getting poorer and poorer. I think this is really pathetic in Hong Kong. We are all Hong Kong people. We are on the same boat. We do not want the boat to sink. However, now many families are going downwards. I think this is really a huge problem for Hong Kong. And inflation rate is high in Hong Kong. We can see demonstrations all the days, and people are now crying out for occupying Central.
There are more and more tactics in terms of crimes. So this is rather saddening. Talents are dropping in number. Elders work very hard until they sustain injuries. Still, they're unable to make their ends meet. If we allow this to continue, society will die, and society may become chaotic. In ancient times, it said that if you win people's heart, you win the whole country. If you lose people's heart, you lose the whole country, the whole state. At present, you only have short-term measures and makeshift measures. You work very hard, but you don't look good. It's because you don't tackle the problems at their root. For over a century, this wealth gap has been widening. It's because of the senior management of the government has not made correct policies. People rely on the government for a good livelihood. I hope that LegCo members who are conscientious enough, as well as the able and the knowledgeable, will do something for the next generation. We should continue to work hard and be pragmatic and practicable. Then people will be grateful to you. This is a battle that you have to win. I wish the government, the CE, the officials, and all the able and knowledgeable a success so that you benefit the whole society. I have to clarify that Mr. Wu Sheng mentioned an expression that's not permissible in this council. As you did not continue with that expression, I did not stop you. So I would urge all those who are present here that certain expressions are not permissible in this council. Next, Ms. Hu Kwan Wing from 關注幾時上公屋小組. Good afternoon, Secretary. Good afternoon, LegCo members. I'm from a low-income family. I'd like to tell you today. Can I speak in Putonghua? I'd like to tell you today that I'm from a low-income family. I've been living in Hong Kong for a long time, and I'm telling you the reality. We only buy wholesale commodities, $180 per piece of clothing, for example, for a down garment. My son has grown to 1.7 meters, but he was still wearing his old uniform. I don't have surplus money to buy him trousers. I don't have washing machines at home. I hand wash his clothing. After deducting all essential expenses, I only have $66 for meals. So I only choose cheap food, and that's not easy to find. I can only buy patent medicine. I'm very afraid to go to see the doctor. And then we dare not to fall ill. My biggest headache is that our ceiling is made of metal sheets, and we only have $2,800. During the summer, it's extremely hot. I suffered from a stroke just recently. My child is having a flu. I fainted, but I dare not go to see the doctor. I only ate patent medicine, drank more water. I also bought patent medicine for my child. Electricity is expensive, $600 per month. And then we live in a structure of $1.4 per unit of electricity. As for the subsidy from the government, we use 0.9 electricity from the power company, costing $1.4 per unit. However, our electricity tariff is the most expensive. The poorer we are, the more expenses we have. Has the government considered the cost of MTR travel every year is affecting a fare increase? What subsidy do we have? I hope that Mr. Zhang will consider this so that we can save more in terms of transport expenses. Then our family expenditure will drop and we can live better. Thank you. Next, Ms. Crunchoyu, let's look at what poverty is. High-ranking officials, what's your electricity tariff every month? Perhaps to you it's a small amount of money. You don't care about electricity tariffs. However, electricity is an essential commodity for Hong Kong. For a 2P household, it uses about 400 units of electricity. How much does that cost? $400. So that's to maintain the basic necessities. According to the Census and Statistics Department's census last year, even for CSS and OAA recipients, for the whole of Hong Kong, 210,000 households earn less than $4,000 per month. 85,000 households earning less than $2,000 per month. Their electricity tariff exceeds 10% of their overall expenditure. That means electricity amounts to a huge sum or head of expenditure. So they're living below the poverty line. Yes, there are one-off subsidies from the government. However, they are just a drop in the ocean. The unscrupulous landlords enjoy the welfare themselves. More seriously, they continue to impose a high tariff, electricity tariff on the tenants. The power company charges 90 cents. They charge their tenants $1.3 to $1.4. Have you ever considered the genuine users, the subdivided flat tenants who try to save more money? It's said that more benefits would be given to the tenants. But if the landlords refuse to plow back the subsidies to the tenants will continue to live below the poverty line. Many of these households are living in poor conditions with poor air ventilation. Many subdivided flats have no windows. Even if there are windows, they won't open them because the external environment is very poor. I heard that mice could enter the flats, odor and waste gases enter their flats, so they have to use air conditioners. And then there are health problems. It's so stuffy in the flats, such that, like Ms. Wu said, they might suffer from a stroke even inside the flat. They may faint. So there should be targeted measures to help these households. These households want to save dozens of dollars of electricity, so they try not to use electricity on ordinary days. They try not to switch on the lights. They may linger in shopping malls for hours. So I hope that you can adopt a two-pronged approach in assisting the poor. Please ask the power companies to reduce the electricity tariffs of subdivided flats so as to reduce their expenses. Thank you. Mr. Lau Ka-chiong. Thank you, Chairman. It said that there are measures to assist the low-income working households, just like food banks, to reduce food expenses as well as the overall family expenses. Many Kaifongs told us that food banks do have problems. First of all, the items distributed are not that realistic. For example, canned food is distributed. Secretary, do you often eat such food, which is not so healthy? I suggest you don't eat that often. In particular, for children, they need more nutritious food. If they eat too much processed food, it's not good to their health. Even for adults, after eating such food, They may have to see the doctor very frequently, and medicine costs far exceed the benefits. So very often, Kaifongs don't quite eat the food after taking them from the food banks. They throw the food away, causing waste. So they're caught in a dilemma. They don't know whether or not to eat the food. Now, this is not a constant measure, only once every 6 months. So even if Kaifongs receive some food this time, they'll be worried about next month. Food banks only offer food to these people. There are not regular assistance programs. In addition, the food distributed is not that realistic. So I wonder whether they really help the Kaifongs. We have almost 1.2 million poor people. After deducting the CSSA recipients, you still have about 700,000. So poverty is a serious problem. Commodity prices are very high. Rent is high, thus adding to the living burden of the poor families who need long-term assistance. So it's urgent to have support for low-income working households to save these Kaifongs and families who are in a plight. We should directly assist the poor households. At the same time, we should support those households who are near the poverty line, particularly the low-income working households, as a preventive measure. Very often they only have casual jobs with unstable income and unstable jobs. If they suddenly lose their jobs, they'll fall below the poverty line. So a household subsidy will be able to support the low-income working households. Even if they have a job, their living burden can be alleviated. They can save more money, such that even if they accidentally lose their job, they can still sustain themselves and their families. And then when they find a job, they don't need to suffer from a heavy burden. So we should assist them tide over their difficulties. So we should have support for the low-income working households. Mr. Wang Yatak, I'm a young person. My friends also face poverty, so I speak on behalf of them. First of all, I have to clarify a misunderstanding or a misconception in society about young people. We are not seeking highly paid jobs immediately upon graduation, and property ownership is a luxury for us. What we want is very simple. We want a stable job, a stable living, so that we can take care of ourselves and our family members and contribute to society. In reality, it's difficult to attain that ideal. Life is difficult. It's difficult to find an ideal job. It's difficult to meet ordinary living expenses. Even though we are very willing to work and work very hard, opportunities are not that many. I admit that among young people, there are some who do not grasp their age and time well, but we are conscientious persons. Even the prodigal son will turn back. Do you give us such a chance? The government always says that we should enhance our competitiveness. That means we should study well so that we'll be able to find a good job. But even if we study hard, given the low pay, how can we pay for the expensive tuition? We can take out a loan from the government. That means upon graduation, we'll become a debtor of the government. And even upon graduation, can we find a stable job? Given the present social phenomenon and so many university graduates cannot find a job, the answer is the negative. Many young people would like to become the breadwinners of their families to sustain their parents. As a result, we're under huge psychological pressure. Even when a young person wants to form a family, it's difficult, because it's not easy just to find a home. And young people face psychological pressure and emotional problems. We're perplexed. Even if we work hard, we're dedicated, life is difficult. We're perplexed by our prospect. Personally, the relationship between society and young people should be complementary to each other. There's no reason for young people to bear such pressure, to live under such huge pressure. I urge the government to have a long and effective solution for the young working poor, and low-income subsidy may be a way out. Mr. Lee Tai-shing from Concerning CSSA and Low-Income Alliance. Mr. Secretary, this is a broken wok with a hole. You contribute to this broken wok. Your boss, C.Y. Leung, is also responsible. You're previously the Commissioner for Labour, the Secretary for Labour and Welfare, and the Director of Social Welfare. You're also an EXCO member. The Gini coefficient is ever rising. The size of our poor population is also rising in the past few decades. Today, you and the CE have a huge responsibility. If something is done, don't come out to claim credit. In the past 1 to 2 decades, you did nothing, so you have created the present dilemma. So even if you do something now, you are only doing remedial work. And this time, if we have a subsidy for low-income working households, if it is not done well and comprehensively, you will suffer from a poor reputation for ages to come. Councillors and political parties should together see how this work can be mended. So we should have a low-income subsidy. In society, we've never had that, so we should have a better and more comprehensive subsidy as a start of a good job. In society, there are now different suggestions and different views. So briefly, councillors, please also tell us your views. And political parties and councillors, you also should have your own solutions, so that our deputations will also understand what's in the mind of the councillors. And what about this low-income subsidy? Please give us more details on what the political parties are thinking of. As for subdivided flats and for low-income people and the have-nots, we must not disregard the kaifongs in PRH units, in which there are a lot of poor people. And then for enhancing the work incentive transport subsidy scheme, it is completely different from a low-income subsidy for low-income working households. As for children, we need a start. You have started something, but that's insufficient. I hope that senior officials and councillors can join hands to work out solutions for the low-income working households to resolve this long-term problem created by the SARG in the last 10 to 20 years. So you should offer a remedy. Next, 葵涌關輝原劏房低收入補貼關注聯席 Ms. Lee Hugh Kwan. Mr. Chairman, I'm concerned about the subdivided flats. CSSA families, single-parent families, etc. have children. They have to sustain so many family members. Therefore, household income cannot meet the expenses. At the moment, they have to suffer from high rent, pay tuition fees for their children, pay for meals, extra expenses, for example, those for picnic, etc. Water and electricity tariffs are very expensive because the landlords impose heavy fees on them. Have you ever used $12 per tank of water in the PRH estates? All these amount to the biggest proportion of family expenses. They can save no more money. So this low-income subsidy should be able to assist the grassroots households. for the subdivided flats in accordance with the family size, the number of children of households living in these flats. The administration should be able to assist them in their expenditure in terms of transport expenses, children's tuition fee, etc. You should try to assist them. The government should also control rent.
So for CSSA families, what the administration can offer is $2,500 as rent assistance. But then for people living in subdivided flats, well, actually, they will have to pay over $3,000 a month. And if you just give them $2,500 as rent assistance, and if they have to pay some $3,000 minimum, then does it mean that they will also have to take out $500 from the CSSA payment in order to make up for that? And also in their living expenses, if they have to pay water charges or water bills and electricity tariff and so on, then that would be rather costly. And also for CSSA families, well, for the lunch supplement, all right, the school will not pay for that. And then for CSSA families, when you calculate their food supplement, it's still not adequate to pay for their lunch at school. And therefore, for primary school students, they can only get about $200 a month for lunch. But then schools are mostly charging over $300 for lunch these days. And therefore, we hope that for the low-income subsidy, we hope that that could help these low-income families to meet their expenses. Next, Miss He, she's not here, and Mr. Ng, also from the concerned group on subdivided flats in Kwai Chung. Yes, you have rightly pointed out that these families are facing a lot of difficulties. All right, only the man or the wife is working, and the income is not able to sustain the entire family for the children's daily living and also the school expenses and so on. They are rather costly. And also for PRH households, well, unless they are living in PRH, they might be able to meet their expenses. If they are living in subdivided flats, then the cost will be very high. The rents, the water bills, and the power charges and so on. In fact, when we talk to these kaifongs, in fact, under the CCF, there are many items or projects. Well, can you benefit from that? Well, they say that these are mostly one-off offers, and it would just help provide ad hoc relief. But then in the long run, they are still concerned. We can see that there are many deputations here, and in front of them we have this walk, and all of them are broken. So there is a big hole in the middle. All right, that shows the current situation in Hong Kong. There is this wide gap between the rich and the poor, and there are also many who are working poor. And these are the residents who are faced with tremendous difficulties. That's why today what we would like to see is for the administration and the bureau director to face up to these problems. That is, these are grassroots who are faced with a lot of problems. We hope that there can be some subsidy or assistance. It's like what we have here. We hope that we can introduce this low-income subsidy as soon as possible in order to meet the needs of these children and also those with special education needs and so on, so that there can be rent assistance and so on. Let's use the sticker and plug the hole here. All right, other than the walk that you have here, we actually have a real walk here. So this is a real problem. We hope that the stickers can be stuck here so that the low-income subsidy can be introduced to help them. All right, the gap between the rich and the poor is really a major issue, and therefore we need to have this low-income subsidy for the households. This is a serious problem of the rich and the poor, and we need to have this subsidy in order to help them meet their expenses. Thank you. Ms. Tam from a Labour group. Well, let's allow the Bureau Director to receive the petition. All right, Ms. Tam is from the Federation of Hong Kong and Kowloon Labour Unions. Thank you. Please go back to your seats, and thank you, Bureau Director. Next, Ms. Tam Kam Lin, Secretary for Social Services from the Federation of Hong Kong and Kowloon Labour Union. Thank you, Chairman. Well, we are discussing the issue of those working households who are not on CSSA. We are willing to see a situation whereby the administration is willing to face up to this problem. Yes, we can see that the administration is prepared to do something about it, but then will that be done in time to help them? Well, these are people who are working and yet they are living in poverty. So in terms of supporting these low-income families, the administration said that there are a number of measures, CSSA, WITS, and so on. All right, they do have some shortfalls. For example, for CSSA, there is this labeling effect. As many have said, many low-income families are inhibited. And then the WITS would involve very cumbersome application procedures, and therefore those in need would also be inhibited. And they are deterred from putting in the application. And as a result, well, we have expected that the number of people who can benefit is quite large, but then the actual turnout is very low. Well, in fact, our union has received some feedback from workers living in Tai Kok Tsui and the neighboring areas. Many of them are living in subdivided flats, and they have applied for public rental housing, and they like to get the flat as soon as possible so that they would not have to put up with the high flat or high rent. And very often they told us that the tenancy agreement, when it's up for renewal, they are very concerned, and it's not about a 2-year tenancy agreement. Well, the owners or the landlord can always evict them if they like, and they can always increase rent whenever they like. And whenever there is a rent hike, they will not be able to sustain it. They simply will not be able to meet their living expenses. And these families should be offered a low-income subsidy in order to ease their plight, because they are on the waiting list. They are actually on the lower end of the income bracket. And according to the 2012 waiting list survey, well, for those who are on the waiting list, the overall income, the median income is $8,500, and it's just 40% of the median income of the average families in Hong Kong. So they are actually earning even less than those living in poverty, and only 70% of them are actually CSSA recipients. In other words, some 90% of the low-income families have not applied for CSSA, and therefore their plight can be imagined, and therefore they're actually fending for themselves. Chairman, as for PRH applicants will have to pass the means test, and the Housing Department is in possession of their information, and therefore offering this low-income subsidy to them will be very direct, and that would also save a lot of administrative costs and procedures. And then for the WITS, the application procedures are very cumbersome. But then for the PRH application, well, for the eligible persons, very few of them would give up on the application. So please do have some more direct and expeditious policy to help them. Next, concerned group for the new arrival low-income families, Ms. Hu. Next, Ms. Wu Mei from Kwong Fai Yuen, new arrival low-income families concerned group, and Ms. Su from Kwai Chung. Can I speak in Putonghua? Yes, please. Well, basically, we are a concerned group for those who live in Kwai Chung. We are new arrival low-income families. As you are aware, these new arrival families have been marginalized because they are not proficient in the local dialect. That's why in terms of finding jobs, they have difficulties. And even if they are able to find jobs, but then because they are new arrivals, their skills would be low, and therefore their wages are not high. And many people also have some negative thoughts about these new arrivals. And after the change in the CSSA policy, well, they will have to meet the 7-year residence rule, and therefore they are not eligible for CSSA. and as a result, they have to live in substandard housing. And most of those living in subdivided flats would be new arrivals, and many people will be living in a small flat or small room of 100 square feet or so. And because of their inability to converse in the local dialect, they are not able to find jobs, and they have also been excluded from the support system of the Hong Kong government. That's why our concerned group would like to appeal to you that these new arrivals' needs should be considered. Well, they are settling in Hong Kong, and they are not trying to get welfare. They are not lazy at all. In fact, for many new arrivals, they are just here to take care of their children. They want them to have a better future and better living. But then after arriving in Hong Kong, they are new arrivals, but then they are actually living in very unequal or unfair terms. All right, the housing is substandard, and there is no prospect for them. And therefore, if we say that Hong Kong is a very affluent city, then I really hope that we can be more accommodating to them, because they are a new group, and they should be given more hope, and they should also be respected as human beings. They should be able to lead a dignified life. Yes, Civic Party, Mr. Sikko Man. Yes, with regard to the support for the low-income families, we have the following views. Number one, well, for the WITS applicants, there should be an increase in the limit, and for the means test, that should be scrapped, and also the number of hours should be 108, 140, and 180 hours respectively, and the amount that they can get would be 900, 1200, and 1500 respectively, and the purpose is to increase the incentive for these low-income workers. And also for the low-income families, we should have a family-based medical voucher scheme, so that every year they will be able to get $1,000, so that they will be able to turn to the private sector for healthcare services. And number three, the administration should look into this. That is, for people who have been on the waiting list for more than 3 years and yet they have not been allocated a PRH flat, there should be a rent assistance for them. Fourthly, the administration should provide more funding to the food banks, and the number of NGOs providing the services should also be increased, and the vetting procedure should be more flexible, so that they can do so more expeditiously, so that food and also a longer term assistance should be offered, and the amount of food and variety should also be improved. And fifthly, the Civic Party would also like to see that well, there should be more aftercare service at schools, and the number of hours should be extended to the evening. And at the same time, dinner should also be provided, so that for the low-income parents, they do not have to worry about taking care of their children after school, and then they will have they will stand a better chance of finding a full-time job, so that for low-income families, their children will not be denied of a chance to pursue the studies. And then for the lowest income groups, for parents, they might have to work long hours, and the working hours might not be stable. And therefore, the administration should provide extra support. For example, there should be fee waiver, there should be longer after-school care. And also for primary and secondary schools, they are organizing many extracurricular activities and visit activities, and therefore different schools will also have a different fee waiver and assistance program. The administration should introduce a unified scheme, so that students will have to put in this form, so that they would be eligible for waivers, for example, extracurricular activities fees, and also air conditioning fee, and also class society or class associations fees, and also PTA fees, and so on, so that these students would not be deterred from applying, because they are concerned about the labeling effect. And also for extracurricular activities, internet expenses, there should also be assistance. And also there should be textbook allowance and also tuition fee assistance to those in need. Thank you. All right, for the first batch, we have already finished with all of them. All right, we can finish by 10 minutes past 5, and then we will have a 5-minute break. Bureau Director, thank you. 24 deputations and individuals have given us a lot of valuable views, and they have given us a lot of detailed views, and many of them do have a valid point, and I'm grateful to that. I'm grateful for that. First of all, I'd like to summarize a few points, and I'd like to clarify some figures. there might have been some misunderstanding about this. Just now, a deputation said that, for the number of people applying for OALA, all right, there were only 340,000. So that's the number. That's the number that has been approved. But then there are still some pending cases. In fact, there have been a backlog, and therefore that will take some time. And therefore, for the 340,000, that's the amount or the number that we have already approved. In fact, we do have tens of thousands of applications that are still being processed. And if we wait till the end of this year, and if you apply before New Year's Eve, then if you're late, we will be giving you back 13 months subsidy. That's why some elders might prefer to wait. So we still have tens of thousands of applications that are being processed. So that's a point of clarification. And also, Mr. Wong Yong-tak, a district councillor from Kwai Chung, he said that the application procedures are very cumbersome. He would like that to be centrally processed. Indeed, we agree with this, but then we do have some new thinking, but then that cannot be done overnight. We do want to do that. Or for different assistance and so on, there are different requirements and different thresholds, and as a result, it's indeed quite cumbersome for people who are not in the know, in particular those from the grassroots. That's why we are thinking about introducing a centralized system. We can have a unified form. We are not able to do it right away. All right, so long as you put in or fill in a form, and then you'll be able to apply for different forms of subsidy from different departments instead of having to turn to different departments for different subsidies. All right, that's the ideal situation. We're moving towards that, and we are thinking about how we can do it. We are actually asking the efficiency unit, the EU, to look into overseas successful experiences. For example, in Australia, they do have this one-stop service, so that people will only have to fill in one form, and then for WITS and other subsidies, they will know exactly what they can do or they are able to do. That would be less time consuming, but then it's not an easy task, and therefore we will have to look into it. In fact, at the COP, we've been looking into it. We would like to do a lot more to help those in need. And thirdly, I'd like to respond to a point made by Ms. Chow from Tin Shui Wai about SMW, because many residents are working casual jobs, but then they are not eligible. Well, I'd like to clarify that is for SMW, whatever hours, whether you're working on casual jobs or not, you will still have to be paid on that basis. But then we will have to do a lot more, in particular for people living in remote areas. How can we provide incentive for them to work? That's why for Tong Chong, Tin Shui Wai, these are the relatively remote districts. We will have to do a bit more in those districts, and we will have to do a lot more at the district level. And Ms. Cheong Pui-Yan and also the Law Society have also made some Oxfam rather have made some very specific proposal. All right, Oxfam has already discussed that with us at the COP. But then for Ms. Cheong, you said that there should you're actually from the Coalition for the Low-Income Families. All right, you have put in a submission. We will consider that very comprehensively. I think your view is very good. And we can also contact you after the meeting so that we can understand a bit more about the thinking behind your proposal. We are very grateful to your suggestion, because they are very specific. And also, Mr. Mann from the Civic Party also talk about the food bank. I'd like to say a few words on that. Well, for food bank, as far as is concerned, we have already helped about 120,000 people. Many are not on CSSA because if they are on CSSA, they will not be eligible. Indeed, they have some financial hardship and they are reluctant to turn to the CSSA. We understand that we have to enhance and improve the system, and some $200 million will be injected into the fund for the food bank. And what we're going to do is, number one, all right, for every 6 months, they'll be eligible for 6 weeks, and we'll be increasing that to 8 weeks.
And in the earlier, or initially, we just distributed canned food to the applicants. We understand that these are not very nutritious food, so now we are changing the policy. We have enhanced the quality, and now there are more varieties. Chairman, please give me 2 more minutes. And now we are distributing supermarket coupons, food coupons, wet market coupons, as well as frozen meat, fresh meat, vegetable, and fruits. And for the ethnic minorities, for example, Pakistanis and Nepalese, we have been distributing adequate food to them. And also for baby milk formula, we are also providing this sort of infant food. So we will be increasing our subsidies to the relevant NGOs by 10%, and more NGOs will be included, in particular in Kowloon West and West New Territories. We have added 2 NGOs, so we will continue to make improvements. So Mr. Wang's comment, that is on youth in poverty, yes, we understand that that is a problem. So the COP has been discussing this. Now, I agree with you. That is for young people, the most important thing is for them to get a job. So we will try our best to help. And lastly, Mr. Ng Kwai Lim, he mentioned that the CCP is just an ad hoc arrangement or assistance. Yes, the CCP is trying to help those people who are not covered by the present social security system. But for those measures that are effective, they would be incorporated into government's regular assistance programs. For example, for preschool children who are autistic, if you want to wait for the social welfare department's assistance, you have to wait for 20 months, and that's a very long time for young children. So now the CCF is providing a fund for the parents to purchase services from other organizations. Now we are providing over $2,000 to such parents for a year. And also for the lunch subsidy, we are also trying to incorporate it into the government's regular assistance program. Chairman, I do not have time to answer all the questions in details, but I'm glad to hear so many good views, and we will try our best to mend that hole. Thank you. Let's take a rest for 5 minutes, and we still have 30